At 7 minutes past 2 in the morning, Emiliano Orsini went down to the kitchen because tonight there was no coffee waiting outside his study door. For 3 years there had been a cup there every night, still warm, no note, no one claiming credit. He crossed the dark hallway and heard someone trying not to cry. One broken breath, then another, muffled as if a hand were pressed over a mouth. He stopped in the kitchen doorway. Maren Holloway sat on the floor against the base of the cabinets, arms wrapped around her knees. By the back door stood a canvas bag, packed and tied, waiting. In 3 years of cleaning this house, he had never once heard her raise her voice. When she looked up and saw him, whatever strength she had left disappeared. She covered her mouth, shook her head, and folded forward. He crossed the kitchen and caught her before she hit the floor. The man whose name was spoken in whispers across the whole bay, kneeling on his own tile, holding a trembling housemaid. He asked nothing, because no question mattered until she could breathe again. The clock on the stove changed from 2:07 to 2:08, and he saw the bag by the door. "My father died," she finally said into his chest. "I have to leave in 4 hours." Then she said the words that destroyed everything he thought he knew about the woman who had cleaned his floors for 3 years. "I can't go without telling you. I've loved you for 3 years. If someone you loved were leaving before sunrise, would you finally speak, or would you let fear decide for you? If this story touched you, leave a like so I know you're still listening. Share it with someone you still have something left to say to, and subscribe to the channel. So every week we have one more good story to walk through together. She was the one who pulled away first. Not because she wanted to avoid him, but because shame rushed in to fill the exact place where the pain had just receded, and it left her unable to lift her eyes. She sat upright, wiped her face with both palms, then braced a hand against the edge of the cabinet and stood. Emiliano rose with her, 1 beat slower. "Don't trouble yourself," she said, her voice raw. "You shouldn't have had to hear any of that. You were saying it to me." "I didn't mean to say it." He reached for the switch on the wall and turned on the light. White brightness spilled across the kitchen, and both of them narrowed their eyes as though they'd been caught in the middle of something that should only ever have existed in darkness. On the stone counter, right beside the place where she set the dish tray every morning, 2 things had been laid side by side with meticulous care: a handwritten letter and a bus ticket. He didn't ask. He walked over, picked up the paper, and read it. A letter of resignation, 14 lines, the handwriting small and even. Dated today. No reason given. Only a thank you for 3 years and a wish for good health. He set it down and picked up the ticket. Newport to Portland, Maine, 6:15 in the morning. One way. "When did you buy this?" "Last night." "Before or after you got the news?" Maren was silent for a beat too long. "My younger brother called close to midnight, after I finished my shift." He said 3 sentences, then hung up. "So after?" "Yes." He placed the ticket beside the letter. The 2 pieces of paper lay parallel, perfectly aligned, as if she'd arranged them with a ruler. Emiliano stared down at them longer than it took to read either one. In 3 years, he'd signed hundreds of documents inside this house, and not one of them had ever made it so difficult for him to breathe as these 2 sheets of paper that didn't mention his name even once. "How were you planning to leave?" he asked. She understood that he wasn't asking about transportation. "What do you mean?" "I'm asking how you were planning to leave my house. Who were you going to call? Who were you going to tell?" "No one." "What does no one mean?" "It means no one." She said it with such calmness that it was the calmness itself that made him look up. "The head housekeeper will see the letter at 6 o'clock. She'll bring it upstairs to you before breakfast. Everything in my room has been cleared out. The sheets have been folded, and I left the keys for the floors in the left drawer. You've arranged this more carefully than most people arrange a wedding. I'm used to leaving things neat." "And what about getting me?" She didn't answer right away. He asked again, and this time his voice was lower, slower, the voice that the people who worked for him had learned to fear. "And what about me, Miss Holloway? I wake up at 6 o'clock, I come downstairs, and you've already been gone for 3 hours. Then what?" Maren looked down at the tiled floor. She stared at it for a long time, as if an answer had been written there. "I was going to leave a note," she said, and he stood there in the middle of his own kitchen. A man who had never allowed anyone anywhere around this bay to see him blink at the wrong moment, and realized that for 3 years he'd lived beside a woman who had already decided that he wasn't worth a goodbye spoken aloud. Emiliano pulled a chair away from the kitchen table and sat down. and that simple gesture unsettled her more than when he had been standing. This man did not sit in the kitchen. In 3 years, she had never once seen him sit here. "Sit down," he said. She remained standing. He did not repeat himself. He rested both elbows on the table, laced his fingers together, and looked at her the way he might look at a file he had just discovered was still blank. There were 37 people working for him in this house. He knew the harbor manager had 3 children, and that the youngest had asthma. He knew the chef sent money back to Palermo every month. Even knew the name of the bank. He knew the driver had once carried a gambling debt of $5,000 in the year 2019, and he knew who had paid it off. He knew the birthdays, hometowns, medical histories, debts, and weaknesses of every one of those 37 people, because in his line of work, not knowing someone meant leaving a door open. Then he looked at the woman standing 2 steps away from him, the woman who had lived in this house for 3 years, who had scrubbed the floor of his study, who had touched every door in his home, and he realized he knew nothing at all. "How much do you make?" he asked. "You pay me, you know." "I'm asking how you spend it." Marin folded her arms across her chest, not in defense, but like someone trying to hold herself upright. "I live in this house. I eat in this house. I don't have anything to spend it on. Then where does it go? I send it home." "How?" "Money orders." He frowned. "You've worked for me for 3 years and you send money by paper money order?" "Yes." "Why not a bank transfer?" "Because a money order doesn't need my name on it." The sentence fell onto the table and seemed to lie there between them. He looked up. "Say that again?" "I don't put my name on it. I don't put a return address either. I go to the post office in town, buy the money order, write the boat shop as the recipient, then put it in a white envelope. 3 years. Every month. 36 times. Yes. Not once with your name on it." "No." He sat in silence for a while. "Why?" She drew in a breath, and for the first time that night, her voice did not tremble from pain. It hardened because of something else. "Because if he knew it was from me, my father would send it back." Emiliano did not ask another question for nearly 30 seconds. Outside the kitchen window, one of the night watch vehicles rolled past, and then shut off its engine. He heard the tires moving over the gravel, and paid no attention to them at all. "Does he accept it?" he asked. "Yes." "You're sure?" "The money never comes back. That's all I know." "He never asks who sends it?" "I don't know." "You don't know?" "I can't ask." He looked at her. "Why can't you ask?" Marin did not answer. He let the question hang there, and he was better at this than anyone she had ever met, because he showed no impatience at all. He simply sat and waited. At last she said, very softly, "Because my father and I don't speak." "Since when?" 18 months. He repeated the number quietly, as though making sure he had heard her correctly. 18 months. 36 blank money orders. And a man 6 hours away by car who had been receiving money from his daughter for 3 years, without ever knowing who it came from, or knowing and never saying so. Emiliano looked at the 2 sheets of paper still lying parallel on the table, then at the woman standing in front of him, and he understood that she had not learned how to disappear tonight. She had been practicing it for 3 years. Emiliano stood, walked over to the stove, and placed a hand on the kettle. It was still faintly warm. He looked at it for a moment, then turned back. "I want to ask you one more question," he said. "Yes. I came down here tonight because there was no coffee outside my study door." She said nothing. "For 3 years, there has been a cup sitting there every night. No note, no knock on the door. I open it, and the coffee is already there." She still said nothing. "I asked the head housekeeper during the first year. She said it wasn't anyone on her staff. I asked the chef. He said he leaves by 10 o'clock. He looked at her. Who puts it there?" Marin didn't turn away. She simply stood there, her arms still folded across her chest, and she didn't answer. The silence lasted long enough to become an answer clearer than anything she could have said. Emiliano leaned back against the edge of the stove. 3 years, he said. "Yes. Even on the nights I came home at 4 o'clock in the morning. Yes. Even that night at the end of January last year, when the whole house lost power. That night I heated it on the gas stove." He gave a slight nod, barely more than a movement. "Why?" She looked down, then she looked up again, and her voice was so calm that the calmness itself gave the words their weight. "Because the light in your study is always on," she said. And no one in this house ever asks if you can sleep. Emiliano didn't answer. He thought about the doors in this house, about the 37 people who passed through them every day, about how every one of them knew the light in his study stayed on until morning, and not one of them had ever thought there was anything worth noticing about it. They treated it as part of the job. The light was on, which meant the boss was still awake, which meant walk softly, speak quietly, don't pass through that hallway. No one saw it as a man who couldn't sleep. You know who I am, don't you? He asked. I know. You know what people say about me out there? I have ears. And you still left coffee outside my study every night for 3 years. It was only a cup of coffee, sir. No, he said. It wasn't. He turned, opened the kitchen cabinet above him, took down the coffee tin, and set it on the stone counter. He didn't know which cabinet it was kept in. He had to open 2 doors before he found it. In his own house, it had taken him 2 tries to find the thing he had drunk every night for 3 years. He stood there with one hand resting on the lid and didn't open it. I drank it every night, he said. 3 years. I didn't miss a single night. I know. I left the empty cup outside the door, and by morning it was gone. I picked it up at 5 o'clock. He turned to face her. 3 years, Miss Holloway. For 3 years you stood outside my study door every night, and I didn't know who that person was. Yes. Why did you never knock? Because I didn't have anything to report. You could have said something. What would I have said? Anything. Your coffee, sir. Sleep well. I'm the one who leaves it here. Anything. Marin looked at him, and for the first time that night, she was the one who didn't look away. You never asked. He opened the coffee tin, then closed it again, and turned toward the ticket still lying on the table. You're going to Portland, he said. Yes. And from Portland where? A smaller bus to Wickham Harbor. 1 hour and 40 minutes. You know the schedule well. I looked it up. When? Marin didn't answer right away. He left the question where it was, and he didn't have to wait long. 2 weeks ago, she said. He turned fully toward her. What did you say? I looked up the bus schedule 2 weeks ago. Your father only died last night. Yes. Then why were you looking up bus routes to Maine 2 weeks ago? She placed one hand on the back of the chair, and this time she sat down, not because he had told her to, but because her legs no longer wanted to hold her up. I'd already taken a job, she said. What job? Home care. An elderly woman in Rockland broke her hip and needs someone to stay overnight and on weekends. Her daughter posted an ad looking for someone last month. I called. They interviewed me over the phone, and they hired me. What qualifications do you have? 2 years of nursing school I never finished, and 3 years cleaning your house. That was enough for them. When do you start? At the beginning of next month. Emiliano stood motionless. He looked at the ticket, at the resignation letter, then at her, and he began arranging the sequence of events in his mind the way he did with the harbor ledgers, and he didn't like the result. So you were already planning to leave? He said, yes. Before your brother called? Yes. Before your father died? Yes. Did you write this resignation letter today or 2 weeks ago? She was silent. Miss Holloway. I wrote it 3 times, she said. The first time was 12 days ago. I tore it up. The second was last week. I tore that one up too. The one you're holding is the third. He set the letter down very slowly, as though it weighed more now than when he'd picked it up. Why? He asked. And this was the place she had been avoiding all night, from the moment he'd walked into the kitchen until now. And she knew she couldn't avoid it any longer. That day I was cleaning the second-floor hallway, she said. The door to your study was partly open. I didn't mean to stop. I was just cleaning that section. What day? Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, in the afternoon. Who was in the room? The lawyer, Mrs. Brannigan. Emiliano said nothing. She was talking about the Pastore matter, Marin said. She said this was what would finally end the trouble at the harbor. She said there wasn't a cleaner way to do it. She said you and she would be perfect. She paused. Then she said something I didn't hear all of. After that, I heard you say exactly 3 words. I couldn't make out what those 3 words were. You heard 3 words. Yes. Then where did you go? I finished cleaning the hallway. That night I sat in my room and searched for jobs in Maine. He looked at her for a long time. You heard half a conversation, he said. Yes. Then you wrote the other half yourself. Yes. And in the half you wrote, I marry her. In the half I wrote, she said, there was about to be another woman living in this house, and I would be the one making the bed for the two of you. He lifted a hand and braced it against the edge of the table. You could have asked me. Asked you what? Whether you were planning to get married? I'm the woman who cleans your floors. You've stood outside my study door every night for 3 years. Standing outside your door doesn't give me the right to ask you that. Emiliano fell silent. When he spoke again, his voice was very quiet. So you're not leaving because of your father? No. Your father's death only made you leave 3 weeks earlier. Yes. You're leaving because of me. Marin lifted her eyes to him, still swollen from crying, and she didn't blink. I'm leaving before you have the chance to tell me I need to make up one more room, she said. 3 days ago, I called Mrs. Brannigan, Emiliano said. At 11 o'clock at night. She was at home. She thought something had happened at the harbor. Marin didn't understand what he was talking about. I told her to cancel it. She looked up. Cancel what? You know what I'm talking about. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She asked if I understood what it would cost. I told her I did. She asked me why. I didn't tell her. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. The distance between them now was only the width of a kitchen table, closer than they had been in all 3 years put together. 3 days, he said. You bought the ticket last night. If you'd asked me at any point during those 3 days, you would have had your answer. She looked down at her hands. He didn't wait for her to speak. I was 29 when my father stopped coming home, he said. That morning, I was still in New Haven. That afternoon, I sat at the head of the table in the downstairs dining room, and 11 men sat along both sides looking at me, and every one of them was very kind to me. He paused. Very kind. For 6 months. Then, one by one, they came to see me in private and told me what they wanted. Marin remained silent. That was 5 years ago. In those 5 years, every good thing anyone has done for me has come with a price. One man wanted a shipping route. Another wanted a place for his son. Some only wanted to stand close enough to me for other people to see them there. I don't blame them, Miss Holloway. That's how my world works. People get paid for kindness, and I'm the one who pays. He placed both hands on the table. So I made a rule for myself. Never need anyone enough to give them the power to leave. She looked up. And you can live like that? I did. For 5 years. He held her gaze. Then every night, a cup of coffee began appearing outside my study door, and no one ever claimed credit for it. No note. Not once did anyone wait there for me to see them. 3 years straight. She started to say something, but he lifted one hand slightly. I had someone look into it. The first year. I told Cormac to check the night schedules. He said no one was assigned to the second floor after 10 o'clock. I let it go, and I told myself it didn't matter, that it was probably just someone in the house. He gave a faint shake of his head. I lied. I didn't want to know, because the day I knew that person's name would be the day I had to pay something in return, and I'd grown so used to everything having a price that I was afraid to ask what this would cost me. It didn't cost anything, she said. I know, he answered. I know now. 3 years later. Somewhere far outside, a gate swung shut. Neither of them turned their head. Miss Holloway, he said. Yes, I'm not good at this. I'm good at other things. What things? Saying what I said to Mrs. Brannigan 3 days ago, without saying why. He drew in a breath. I'm going to tell you why now. She sat perfectly still. I love you, he said. Nothing came after it. He didn't add a joke to soften the words, didn't add a single sentence that could give him a way back out, and that was what finally broke her. Her hands began to tremble on the tabletop. She stood, walked around the corner of the table, and kissed him, a brief kiss filled with pain. Then she stepped back half a pace, both hands still gripping the front of his coat. This is the worst timing in the history of mankind, she said. Probably. This doesn't change anything. In 4 hours, I still have to leave. I know, he said. But at least now, when you go, you'll know exactly what you're leaving behind. Her phone vibrated on the tabletop at 2:40. She looked at the screen, opened the message, and Emiliano saw her face change before she managed to say anything. The 6:15 bus has been canceled, she said. Vehicle trouble. When is the next one? She scrolled down with her finger. Then she scrolled again, more slowly, as if the second time might somehow produce a different answer. 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. He did the calculation in his head almost instantly. What time would you get to Wickham Harbor? Close to 10 o'clock at night. She set the phone down. The funeral home is expecting me at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Someone has to be there to sign. My brother is 17. He can't sign. She said it with perfect clarity, in the voice of someone still trying to arrange everything neatly enough to keep it from falling apart. Then she raised a hand over her mouth, and for the second time that night, she collapsed into the chair. Emiliano didn't offer a single word of comfort. He stood, walked toward the back door, and picked up the canvas bag. "What are you doing?" she asked through her fingers. "I'm driving you home." She looked up. "What did you say?" 6 hours by car. If we leave now, we'll be there by 8 o'clock in the morning. That gives you 3 hours before the appointment. You can't. I can. You have work. I do. You have meetings. I do. You're Emiliano Orsini, she said, and her voice broke in the middle of his name. You don't drive 6 hours to Maine for the woman who cleans your house. He walked past her, opened the drawer beneath the wall phone, and took out a ring of keys. I'm not calling a driver, he said. I'm not bringing anyone with us. She watched him holding the keys, and she understood that he wasn't making an offer. He took out his phone, dialed a number, and raised it to his ear. 2:45 in the morning. The person on the other end answered after the second ring, completely awake, like someone accustomed to being called at this hour. Nell, he said. I won't be there this morning. Move everything to Thursday. If Cormac asks, tell him I'm away on personal business. There was a pause on the other end. Where are you? In my kitchen. Who's with you? No one. Emiliano. Go ahead. The other person is Miss Holloway, isn't she? He didn't answer. Nell drew in a breath, loud enough for him to hear through the phone. Her father died last night, he said. The bus was cancelled. I'm driving her home to Maine. The silence on the other end came again, longer this time. When Nell spoke, there was no surprise in her voice at all, and that was what unsettled him most. You listen to one thing I have to say, then I'm hanging up, she said. All right. You're a man who's used to solving things by picking them up and carrying them away. You've done that your whole life. You're very good at it. What are you trying to say? Don't turn this into a rescue just because your feelings make you uncomfortable. He said nothing. Ask her what she needs, Nell said. Then do exactly what she tells you. Nothing more. The line went dead. Emiliano slipped the phone into his pocket and stood still for a moment in the brightly lit kitchen, the canvas bag still in his hand, while the woman sitting at the table watched him, waiting for him to say something about how everything was going to be all right, but he didn't say it. He set the canvas bag down on the floor exactly where he stood, and he didn't pick it up again. Miss Holloway. Yes. What do you need right now? Marin looked up at him as if he had asked the question in a language she didn't understand. What did you say? I'm asking what you need. Right now. Over the next 6 hours. You tell me, and I'll do it. You don't have to do anything. I know I don't have to. I'm asking what you need. She fell silent, and the silence lasted so long that he thought she wouldn't answer. The truth was, she was trying to remember the last time anyone had asked her that question. She remembered. 3 years ago, a night nurse at the hospital in Bangor had asked if she needed a chair, and she had said no, thank you. Since then, every question anyone had asked her had begun with, could you please? I'm not used to that question, she said. I'm not used to asking it. She wiped her face again, then sat up straighter. All right, she said. 3 things. Go ahead. First, she looked directly at him. Don't tell me everything is going to be all right. You haven't said it all night, and I know you're about to. Everyone says it. People say it because they can't stand the silence, but it isn't going to be all right. My father is dead, and there isn't a sentence in the world that can make that all right. If you say it, I'll have to smile and thank you, and I don't have the strength left to do that. He gave a single nod. I won't say it. Second, she hesitated slightly. Coffee, strong enough to count as medicine. 6 hours on the road, and I can't sleep. If I sleep, I'll dream, and I'm not ready for that yet. All right. Are you going to stop somewhere and buy it? No, he said. I'm going to make it here, now. I know which cabinet you keep the coffee in. She looked at him for a moment, then lowered her eyes to the table. "And the third?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. This was the hardest of the three, and she knew how it was going to sound. "The third thing," she said. "You said something to me in this kitchen, and I said something to you too. I'm not taking back what I said, but you need to understand one thing." "What?" "The woman sitting here now and the woman who walks out of Wickham Harbor when all of this is over may not be the same person." He said nothing. "I haven't seen my brother in 18 months. I don't know what he'll say to me when he opens the door. I don't know what's still left in that house. I don't know what I'll be like after I see my father for the last time." She drew in a breath. "If I come back here and I'm not the woman you just said those words to, then don't make me pretend. I can't pretend." Emiliano stood still for a long time. Then he turned, opened the cabinet above him, took down the coffee tin, and this time he opened the right door on the first try. "First, I won't say it," he said, twisting the lid off the tin. "Second, the coffee will be strong." He paused. "Third, yes. If the person who walks out of Wickham Harbor isn't you, then I'll get to know her." She looked at him, and she couldn't say anything. "Those are the only 3 things I promise," he said. "Nothing more." The car left Newport before dawn. They had been on the road for almost an hour when she spoke first. "You aren't asking anything. What do you want me to ask?" People usually ask how old he was, what he did for a living, what he died from. "If I ask, do you want to answer?" She thought about it. "Yes." "Then I'll ask, what did he do?" "He built boats, wooden boats. The shop belonged to my grandfather before him. It opened in 1971. My father started sweeping floors there when he was 12. "Did you work there too?" "Every summer, starting when I was 9. My job was sanding, and I wasn't allowed to touch the machines." "Did you like it?" "I liked the smell of cedar. I still do." She looked out the window for a while. "My mother's name was Della. She died when I was 20. From what?" "Cancer. 11 months from the day we found out until the day she was gone." Emiliano said nothing. She went on, her voice even, the voice of someone who had told this story inside her own head so many times that she no longer stumbled over any part of it. "I was in my 2nd year of nursing school in Bangor then. I went home for a week, and I never went back. I left in the middle of the semester. The school kept my records open for 2 years. Did you ever go back?" "No." "Why?" "Because by the end of those 2 years, I didn't have any money left, and I'd gotten used to not being someone who went to school anymore. During those 11 months, who took care of her? I did." "What about your father?" Marin was silent for a long moment. "My father stayed at the shop." "All day?" "All day. Then all evening. Some weeks he came home at 11 o'clock at night, ate standing up in the kitchen, then went upstairs and slept in the spare room." "Did he ever go into her room?" "Yes, in the mornings. He'd stand in the doorway and ask how she was feeling. She'd say she was fine, and then he'd leave." She said it and stopped. "He rebuilt the entire roof of the shop that fall, by himself. Replaced every shingle. I remember because I would sit beside my mother's bed and hear the hammering from the other end of town." "Did she ever say anything about that?" "Never. Just once. She told me my father was hopeless at everything except building boats. She said it like she was defending him." "And you?" "I was angry," Marin said. "I was angry with him for 7 years." Emiliano kept his eyes on the road ahead. "What happened 18 months ago?" "He called me. On a Sunday. We still talked on Sundays then. Maybe 10 minutes at a time. Mostly about the weather and whatever was happening around town." "Then what?" "That day he sounded different. He said his hands weren't as good as they used to be. He said my brother was 15 and had already missed 3 days of school to watch the shop. He told me to come home." "What did you say?" "I told him I had a job in Newport. Then he said family should matter more than a job cleaning somebody's house." She said the sentence quickly, as if spitting out something she had been holding in her mouth for a very long time. "And I told him that if family mattered so much, he would have been beside my mother's bed instead of hiding in that shop for 11 months. The car went silent. "Then what did you do?" "I hung up." "Did he call back?" "No." "Did you call him back?" Marin didn't answer immediately. She lifted the coffee cup to her lips, then lowered it again without drinking. "Yes," she said. 6 times. "Over how long?" "The first 2 weeks. The first 4 times he didn't answer. The 5th time, The line was busy. The 6th time, I let it ring until it stopped. Then I gave up. And after that, I stopped. He said nothing. She turned to look at him, waiting for something. Anything. The sort of thing people usually said to one another at times like this. That she had been young. That everyone said cruel things sometimes. That surely her father had forgiven her. Emiliano kept both hands on the steering wheel and didn't say any of those things. 6 times. And then you stopped, he repeated. Yes. And he never called once. Not once, she said. 18 months. Her phone rang close to 7 o'clock. An unfamiliar landline number. She answered, and Emiliano could hear half of the conversation. Yes, I'm his daughter. Yes, I'm on my way. No, my brother hasn't called me back. Then her voice changed. Could you say that again, please? She listened for a while longer. What safe? The one in the workshop. She listened again. How many? Then she went silent for a very long time, and Emiliano knew something was wrong, because her hand had tightened around the cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Read the name on the envelope to me again. She listened. Spell it. She listened. Then she turned her head and looked at him slowly, with the expression of someone who had just heard something she couldn't make sense of. Don't open it, she said into the phone. I'll be there this afternoon. Don't open it. She ended the call and set the phone on her lap. Who was that? He asked. The lawyer in town. He's handled my father's paperwork for decades. What did he say? This morning he opened the safe in the boat shop office, at my brother's request. There were 3 things inside. What 3 things? The papers for the shop, a will drawn up 13 months ago. She paused, and a sealed letter. He glanced at her. For you? No. For your brother? No. She stared straight through the windshield. Your name is written on the envelope. Emiliano nearly missed the turn. He had to slow down and move into the right lane, and for nearly 10 seconds he didn't say anything at all. Say that again. Emiliano Orsini, she said. Handwritten. Your full name. I even made the lawyer spell it out, because I asked him to make sure. Is there an address? No address. No stamp. No postmark. She turned toward him. It was never sent. It's been sitting in the safe ever since he wrote it. He gripped the steering wheel and kept his eyes fixed on the road ahead. I've never met your father, he said. I know. I've never spoken to him on the phone. I've never even seen his face in a photograph. I know. Then why would a man I've never met sit down, write my name on an envelope, seal it, and lock it in a safe? Marin didn't answer. He looked at her for a second, then turned his eyes back to the road. Miss Holloway. Yes. How did he know my name? She was silent. Tell me. From me, she said. He didn't ask another question. He waited. We talked every Sunday, she said, for almost the first 1.5 years that I worked there. 10 minutes, sometimes 15. He'd ask whether I was eating properly, whether I was sleeping, whether the place I worked treated me decently. And what did you tell him? I told him about the job. What did you tell him about me? I told him about the man whose house I cleaned. Emiliano tapped his thumb once against the rim of the steering wheel, then stopped. How much did you tell him? What do you mean? I'm asking how much you told him about me, to a man 6 hours away whom you say you were angry with. She turned her face toward the window. Outside, a road marker appeared and slipped behind them. She watched it pass before answering. Enough for him to write you a letter, she said. He didn't ask another question for the next 10 minutes. During those 10 minutes, he thought about a 61-year-old man sitting in the office of a boat shop in Maine, writing Emiliano's name on an envelope, sealing it, and placing it in a safe beside his own will, not mailing it, not asking anyone to deliver it, simply locking it away in the place people would only open after he was gone. When did he write it? He asked. The lawyer doesn't know. There's no date on the envelope. Then 13 months ago would be the earliest. It could also have been last week, she said. They reached Wickham Harbor close to 8 o'clock in the morning, and the car passed the Holloway boat shop with its old wooden sign on the roof and a white sheet of paper taped to the glass door, announcing that it was closed due to a death in the family. Marin didn't turn her head to look. The house was 4 blocks away. She got out of the car, stood at the entrance for a moment before climbing the steps, and knocked on the door of her own home like a visitor. The door opened after the second knock. Bodhi stood half a head taller than she did, his hair disheveled, dark circles beneath his eyes, wearing a wrinkled sweatshirt as though he had slept in it. He looked at his sister, then over her shoulder toward the car and the man standing beside it. Bodhi. Who did you come with? The bus was canceled. Someone drove me home. The boy didn't ask anything more about that. He stepped back half a pace to let her in, then stood, blocking the middle of the hallway with both hands shoved into the pockets of his sweatshirt. You can leave as soon as you're done, he said. The lawyer needs your signature. Sign the papers, then you can go back to Newport. Bodhi, I mean it. I'm not going to keep you here. Marin set her bag on the floor. I'm sorry. Sorry for what? For not being here. You haven't been here for a year and a half. He didn't say it loudly. That was what made the words so heavy. Dad called you for a whole year. Marin went still. What? Dad called. You. The boy separated each word. For an entire year. I stood right here, in this exact spot, and watched him dial your number. He had to use his left hand because his right one didn't work properly. Some nights he tried 3 or 4 times. She shook her head slowly. No. What do you mean no? I never received a single call from Dad. You're lying. I'm not lying, Bodhi. Then you blocked his number. I didn't block it. I don't believe you. I have no reason to lie to you now. Bodhi looked at her, and for a few seconds, something in his expression wavered. Then it hardened again. Then explain it. Dad sat in that chair and dialed your number and nobody answered. For a whole year. Explain that to me. I can't explain it. Then don't stand there and tell me Dad didn't call. I'm not saying Dad didn't call, she said. I'm saying I never received the calls. The brother and sister stood facing each other in the narrow hallway, both of them telling the truth, and that was precisely why neither of them could argue the other one down. Emiliano stood at the threshold without stepping inside, watching them both the way he watched people in meetings at the harbor when he needed to know who was hiding something. He had sat across from some of the best liars on the East Coast. He knew the breathing rhythm of someone inventing a story. There was no one like that here. This 17-year-old boy believed every word he had just said. So did the woman standing across from him. Did Dad ever tell you to call me? Marin asked. Bodhi opened his mouth, then closed it again. Bodhi. No. What do you mean no? I mean Dad never told me to call you. He turned and walked toward the kitchen. And something in the way he turned away told her there was more behind that answer. Who looked after you while Dad was sick? She called after him. No one. Bodhi. 2 men from the shop, he said without turning around. Whit and the other one. They stopped by Friday nights, brought food, checked the house to see if anything needed fixing. That's all. He stopped at the kitchen doorway. I'm 17. I can take care of myself. Then he disappeared inside. Marin remained alone in the hallway, and Emiliano stepped in and closed the door behind him. You believe him, don't you? He asked quietly. I do. He believes you too. He doesn't. He does, Emiliano said. He just doesn't know what to do with that yet. Marin followed her brother into the kitchen. Bodhi was standing with his back to her, his hands gripping the edge of the sink, and he didn't turn around when she came in. I want to ask you something. Ask. What number did Dad dial? He was silent. Bodhi. What number did Dad dial? The boy let go of the sink, walked past her, and went to the landline phone mounted on the wall beside the door. Beneath it was a narrow drawer. He pulled it open, and the wood gave a dry squeal from not having been used in a long time. Inside was a stack of envelopes. He lifted the whole stack out and set it on the table. Here, he said. Marin didn't touch them right away. She looked down. White envelopes, neatly stacked, each one addressed in ballpoint pen, the handwriting large and shaky, some words written over places where mistakes had been made. She picked up the top envelope and read the address. Then she set it down and picked up the second, then the third. This is the address of my old boarding house, she said. Yes. I moved out of there 3 years ago. I know. I moved into my employer's house in the 2nd month, I told Dad. Dad forgot. She flipped quickly through the stack. More than a dozen envelopes, some sealed, some still open. None of them had stamps. Not one had ever left this drawer. Why didn't Dad mail them? Because Dad couldn't get to the post office, Bodhi said. Sit down. I can stand. Sit down. She sat. The boy pulled out the chair across from her and sat down too, and for one brief moment, he looked exactly his age. 14 months ago, Dad had a stroke, he said. Marin made no sound. In the morning, at the shop, 2 of the men found him. They took him to Rockland. He was in the hospital for 10 days. Why didn't you call me? I'm telling you now. He drew in a breath. Dad survived. He could walk. His right hand was weak. One leg dragged a little, but he could still get around on his own. The only thing was, he couldn't talk anymore. What do you mean he couldn't talk? He understood everything. He could think everything. But when he tried to say it, the words wouldn't come out right. The doctor called it something. I don't remember the name. Dad would want to say, saw, and chair would come out instead. Some days he could only get out 2 words, and then nothing. Some days he couldn't say a single word. He would just sit there and breathe. Marin raised a hand over her mouth. Dad practiced writing with his left hand, Bodhi said, looking down at the stack of envelopes. He practiced for 3 months. You can tell from the handwriting. The first letter took him almost a week to write. Then why didn't he send them? Because he kept writing that same address. That was the only address he remembered. I told him you didn't live there anymore. He nodded. He understood. And then the next day he'd write the exact same address again. She looked up. You had my number. I didn't. You had to. You changed your number when you moved into that house. When I called your old number, it said it wasn't in service. He pushed the stack of envelopes aside. It took me 4 months to find your new number. How? I called the nursing school in Bangor. I lied and said I needed to reach you about an old record. They read me the number you had put on your paperwork when you requested to leave school temporarily. Marin stared at her younger brother. I gave it to Dad, Bodhi said. I wrote it on a piece of paper and stuck it on the refrigerator. Dad dialed it that same night. You answered, he said. The first time, you did answer. She sat perfectly still. Dad heard you say hello. Then he opened his mouth, and nothing came out. He just stood there holding the receiver. I was right beside him. He kept breathing into the phone. And then you hung up. I thought. I know what you thought. Marin pulled out her phone with both hands shaking, opened the blocked calls list, and scrolled down. A string of unfamiliar landline calls. Area code 207. She had blocked the number in April of last year. She stared at it and couldn't breathe. I told Dad to text me, she said, her voice breaking. Dad couldn't text, Marin. His fingers couldn't work that tiny keyboard. Then you should have texted me. Bodhi looked up, his eyes red. I told Dad to let me text you, he said. I told him 3 times. Dad said no. Why? Because Dad begged me not to tell you he was sick. She shook her head. He begged me, Marin, Bodhi said. He didn't order me. He took out a piece of paper and wrote it down because he couldn't say it. He wrote that you'd finally built a life of your own. He wrote that he didn't want you coming home because you felt sorry for him. He wiped his face with the sleeve of his sweatshirt. Then he wrote one more sentence. He wrote that if his girl wanted to talk to him, she'd call on her own. Marin stood up so quickly that she knocked the chair over, walked through the back door, and went out to the old wooden dock behind the house, where her father had tied his little boat ever since she was a child. She stood at the end of the dock, with both hands braced against the railing, her head bowed, and she didn't cry out loud. Liano came out about a minute later. He didn't touch her. He stood 1 step away and said nothing until she spoke first. Don't say anything. All right. Don't tell me my father wasn't angry with me. You didn't know him. I didn't. Don't tell me I was young. Don't tell me everyone says cruel things sometimes. I won't. She turned around, her eyes bloodshot, and for the first time that night, her voice rose. Then say something. He looked at her. Your father should have told you he was sick, he said. She froze. He didn't. He chose not to. He had his reasons, and I understand those reasons, but it was still his choice. He continued, his voice steady, never rising at all. Your brother should have told you too. He's 17. He was frightened. He obeyed his father. And he still should have told you. He knew where his sister worked. If he could find your phone number in 4 months, he could have sent a message. He's still a child. He still should have told you, he repeated. And you, Marin looked at him. You called 6 times, and then you stopped. You could have called from another phone. You could have written a letter. And you knew his address because you sent money there every month. 36 times, Miss Holloway. 36 envelopes you carried to the post office, and not once did you put a piece of paper inside. She raised a hand to her mouth. There are 100 things each one of the 3 of you could have done, he said. None of them can be done now. She stood there, her entire body trembling. He let the words remain between them without filling the silence with anything else. Then what do I do now? She asked. 4 things. She looked up. You stay with your brother. He's 17. And tonight he'll sleep alone in that house if you aren't there. She gave the faintest nod. You take care of your father's funeral properly. Someone has to sign the papers at noon, and that person is you, not him. Yes. You read what your father left behind, every piece of it, including the envelope in the safe, whatever is inside. He paused. And the 4th thing is harder than the other 3 put together. What? You stop punishing yourself long enough to grieve for him. She stared at him without blinking. You're standing here putting yourself on trial, he said. I know what that is. I've been doing it for 5 years. It's much easier. It gives you something to do with the pain. But as long as you're busy condemning yourself, you haven't spent a single second grieving for him, and he's dead, Miss Holloway. He deserves to be mourned by his daughter, not used by his daughter as evidence against herself. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Then her face broke apart. Emiliano still didn't step toward her. He remained exactly where he was, his arms at his sides, and let her decide. Marin took 1 step, then another, and rested her forehead against his shoulder, both hands still gripping the railing behind her, standing on her own 2 feet, and cried. When the 2 of them came back into the kitchen, Bodhi was still sitting exactly where they had left him. He had gathered the envelopes back into a neat, squared stack. I kept this too, he said. He pushed a small, pale pink slip toward his sister, about half the size of her palm, its edges worn soft with age. Marin picked it up. A post office receipt. Certified mail, with delivery confirmation. She read the date and saw that it was from 11 months ago. What is this? It's the only one that ever made it out, Bodhi said. Explain. The boy lifted a hand and scratched the back of his neck, the same thing he had done since childhood whenever he was about to admit to something. I got sick of the whole boarding house address thing. Dad kept writing that wrong address over and over, and there was a whole stack of letters sitting in the drawer. It was driving me crazy just looking at them. So what did you do? I found out where you worked. Marin set the receipt down. How? Remember the birthday coat you sent me last year? Yes. The shipping label showed where the package had been sent from. It didn't have the full street address, just the town and the zip code. I went to the town library. I sat there for 3 afternoons. He shrugged. There aren't that many houses in Newport that look that big on a map. I checked the landowner names in the county tax records. I found the name Orsini. Emiliano stood in the kitchen doorway without moving. Then what? Marin asked. Then I took one of the envelopes out of the drawer, peeled off the old address label, and wrote the new address on it. I didn't tell Dad anything. I just handed him the envelope already addressed and told him to write. It took him 2 days. He pointed at the pink slip. That Saturday, I rode my bike to the post office. I sent it certified. I paid an extra $1.35 for delivery confirmation because I wanted to know for sure that it got there. Did it? Bodhi reached over and turned the receipt over. On the back, inside the recipient's signature box, there was a hurried, handwritten signature, and beside it was the delivery stamp. Marin read the stamp. 11 months ago, 9:42 in the morning. It got there, Bodhi said. The post office confirmed that somebody signed for it. I brought this home and showed Dad. He sat there holding it, nodded a few times, then put it in the drawer. He looked at his sister. After that, Dad didn't write another one. He waited. Marin couldn't speak. He waited 3 months, Marin. He waited all the way until Christmas. Then he stopped. Emiliano walked toward the table. Let me see that. Marin handed it to him. He held it between 2 fingers, turned it toward the light coming through the window, and looked at the signature box. The handwriting was rushed, but the first letter was clear. A large C, a period, then a D, followed by 4 more letters dragged into a single line. C. Dean. He said nothing. He stared at it for a very long time, and during that silence, the kitchen became quiet enough to hear the refrigerator running. Marin looked at him. What's wrong? He didn't answer. Mr. Orsini. He was still holding the receipt. What filled his mind now wasn't the house in Maine, or the boat builder he had never met. It was the stone foyer in Newport, the small wooden table beside the front door where the mail carrier left deliveries every morning. And the man who had stood beside that table every morning for the past 5 years. The man who had sat beside him in the dining room that afternoon when Emiliano was 29. The man Emiliano had once told to check the night duty schedules, and who had answered that no one was assigned to the second floor after 10 o'clock. "What's wrong?" Marin asked for the third time. Emiliano set the receipt down on the table very gently, as though it might break. "Cormac Dean," he said. "Who?" "One of my men." He looked up at her, and what came next was the hardest sentence he had ever spoken in his life. "It reached my house, and it never reached you." Emiliano stepped into the backyard and called Nell Brannigan at 9:15. "You're at the office, aren't you?" "I am." "Go up to the house, into the duty room. There's a logbook for incoming and outgoing mail in the safe cabinet on the left. Cormac started it in 2021. What am I looking for?" "The name Holloway." Nell didn't ask another question. She hung up. 40 minutes later, she called back, and her voice had changed. "Are you sitting down? Just tell me." 11 items, she said, from February of last year through December. The first was certified mail. The next 10 were regular letters. He stared across someone else's backyard and saw nothing at all. "How are they recorded in the log?" "In the classification column, all 11 have the same 2 words, security screening. In the disposition column, it says hold. In the signature column, every one of those 11 entries is signed by Cormac Dean. Not one was forwarded to me. Not one. Not one was delivered to the recipient. No, he was silent. Emiliano," Nell said. "Listen to me. That screening column is part of an actual procedure. You approved it in 2021, after what happened at Pier 7. Any mail sent to the house for staff has to pass through security first. I know what I signed. Then on paper, he didn't do anything wrong. On paper. But the procedure clearly says that after screening, the mail has to be returned to the recipient within 48 hours unless there's a threat. If there's a threat, a report has to be filed and you have to be notified. Are there any reports? Not one. 11 items, 14 months, not a single report. Not one." He switched the phone to his other hand. "Open the harbor records." "Which ones?" "Docking schedules, starting in February of last year." Nell was quiet for a beat. "You think these things are connected?" "I don't think anything yet." "Open them." She called him a third time, close to 10:30. This time she didn't ask whether he was sitting down. From February of last year through November. There were 7 times when docking schedules were changed at the last minute. She said. Cormac approved all 7. On each of those occasions, our cargo reached the dock between 2 and 5 hours later than scheduled. And then? And all 7 times, another party got in before us. The same party. 7 out of 7. He didn't need to ask the name. He knew who had been behind the shipments cutting ahead at the South Harbor for the past 18 months. "Renzetti," he said. 7 out of 7, Nell repeated. "That's not coincidence, and you and I both know it." Emiliano stood very still for a long time. "What do you think this is?" he asked. "I think he's selling the schedules." "That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking what you think about the 11 envelopes." Nell exhaled. "You want me to tell you what I really think? Say it." "I don't think he cared about the letters at all," she said. "I think he opened the first one because the procedure required it, read it, and saw it was harmless. A sick old man writing to his daughter. Nothing more." "Then why keep it?" "Because he saw that it could be useful." "Useful how?" "Emiliano." Her voice slowed. "Do you think there's anyone in that house who hasn't noticed the cup of coffee outside your study every night?" He didn't answer. "The man responsible for security in your house, 5 years, walking the second-floor hallway every night. You think he didn't know who was leaving it there?" "He told me no one was assigned to the second floor after 10 o'clock. "Exactly. No one was assigned. She went up there off the clock, outside her duties, without being told. He knew better than anyone." Nell paused. "He kept those letters because they gave him something to hold on to in case he ever needed it." "Needed what?" "Needed to push her out of that house," she said. "A woman who cleans floors isn't worth his attention. A woman you pay attention to is. He's been selling you to someone else, Emiliano. The last thing he wants is someone inside your house whom you're willing to listen to." Marin found him in the backyard, the phone still in his hand, and she knew immediately that something was wrong because he was standing too still. Who were you just talking to? My lawyer. About what? He didn't answer that. He raised the phone and began dialing another number. Who are you calling? Someone in Providence. For what? Go back inside the house. She didn't. She stepped forward and planted herself between him and the kitchen door. What are you going to do? Miss Holloway, what are you going to do? Emiliano lowered the phone. When he spoke, his voice was still perfectly normal, and that was what frightened her. One of my men kept 11 letters from your father for 14 months, he said. He kept them inside my house. He let an old man writing with his left hand sit and wait until Christmas. He paused. And during that same period, he sold my harbor schedules to outsiders 7 times. In my world, there is a way this gets handled, and I know that way very well. What way? You don't need to know. I do. No, Mr. Orsini. She stepped half a pace closer. Whose name are you going to do it in? He was silent. Answer me. Whose name? Mine. No, she said. If it were for you, you would have done it last night when you learned he was selling the harbor schedules. Except you didn't know that last night. You learned it 20 minutes ago. At the same time you learned about the 11 letters, and you reached for the phone immediately. He looked at her. You're doing this in my father's name, she said. On the other side of the kitchen wall came the sound of Bodhi opening the refrigerator. They both heard it, and they both stayed silent until the refrigerator door closed again. My father built boats his whole life, Marin said. 40 years. He never made anyone bleed, not even people who might have deserved it. When I was 13, someone stole lumber from the shop. My father knew who did it, and all he did was go to the man's house, sit down, drink coffee with him, and come home. He told me this shop didn't owe anybody its anger. She looked at Emiliano. I don't want blood spilled in my father's name. That man hurt you. That man hurt me, and I won't forget it. But if you do what you're planning to do, then next week people in this town will be saying, Old Mr. Holloway died, and someone paid for his letters in blood. That will be the last thing people say about my father. She shook her head. I won't allow it. Emiliano stood motionless for a long time. In 5 years, no one had ever said I won't allow it to him. People had begged him. People had advised him. The smart ones stayed quiet and slowed things down until he changed his mind on his own. No one had ever stood directly in his path and said those words to his face. What kept him from becoming angry wasn't that she was right. It was that for the first time in 5 years, someone had given him another choice, instead of simply letting him walk toward the ending everyone already knew was coming. Then what do you want me to do? He asked. You have a mail log? Yes. You have harbor records? Yes. You have 11 lines with his signature? Yes. Then bring him down with those, she said. Not because I'm kind, because it's stronger. People can forget an act of anger, but they can't erase a signature. He watched her for another moment. Then he lifted the phone, canceled the call that hadn't connected yet, and dialed Nell again. Make copies of the entire mail log and the harbor records, he said when she answered. 3 copies. Put one somewhere no one can get to it. And Cormac? Don't touch him. Don't let him know you've opened that book. He looked at Marin as he spoke the next sentence. I'll deal with it when I get back. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, after the papers at the funeral home had been signed, the town lawyer came to the house carrying a file case and sat down at the kitchen table. He placed the will in front of him, put on his glasses, and read through each section in order without adding a single word of his own. This document was drawn up on March 18th of last year. There were 2 witnesses, both of them men who work at the shop. I prepared it according to what your father wrote down for me, because by then he could no longer speak. Marin nodded. Bodhi sat beside his sister with both hands resting in his lap. Section 1. Regarding the tax debt of Holloway Boatworks. The total amount of unpaid taxes and penalties at the time this will was prepared was $28,400. The county had issued a second notice, but had not yet entered an order of sale. The shop still remains family property. So we haven't lost it? Bodhi asked. You haven't lost it, the lawyer said, then continued reading. Section 2. Your father signed a conditional transfer agreement with the 2 men employed at the shop, whose respective lengths of service are 31 years and 32 years. Under this agreement, the 2 men will purchase the entire business, including the workshop, equipment, business name, and all unfinished orders, for the symbolic price of $1 in exchange for assuming the full tax debt and paying it according to a 4-year installment schedule. He turned the page. This agreement only takes effect if 2 conditions are met. What conditions? Marin asked. The first condition. Miss Marin Holloway, the daughter, must sign her consent. If you don't consent, the agreement becomes void, and full ownership of the shop passes to the 2 children. And the second condition? The second condition. Mr. Bodie Holloway must complete high school and receive his diploma. If he leaves school before graduating, the agreement also becomes void. Bodie's head snapped up. What? The lawyer read the sentence again exactly as written, more slowly this time, then continued. Section 3. Regarding the house at 41 Cotter Street, the house is not included in the transfer agreement and may not be used as security for any debt belonging to the shop. It belongs equally to the 2 children and may not be sold for 5 years from the date the estate is opened. It can't be sold, Marin repeated. It can't be sold, the lawyer confirmed. Section 4. Regarding the cash held in the savings account at the local bank, the balance at the time the will was prepared was $19,200. That money is to be kept separate, with its stated purpose being Bodie's education after high school, in whatever form he chooses. Bodie said nothing. He looked down at the tabletop. Section 5. The lawyer looked up at Marin over the rims of his glasses. Your father appoints you as Bodie's legal guardian until he turns 18. Marin placed both hands on the edge of the table. Do I have a choice? You have the right to decline. If you decline, the matter goes to county family court. I'm not declining, she said immediately. The lawyer nodded and wrote a note in the margin. Section 6, the final section. Regarding the shop, there is one exception. Your father reserved one item that isn't included in the transfer. What item? A wooden boat that is still unfinished, located in the innermost bay of the workshop. The will specifically states that it may not be sold, may not be dismantled, and belongs to the 2 children. Does it give the boat a name? Marin asked. The lawyer checked the line on the page again. Yes, he said. In parentheses, your father wrote that the boat's name is Della. The lawyer folded the will closed, then unlocked his file case and took out the final item. A white envelope, sealed, its edges slightly yellowed. He placed it on the table and turned it so the side with the writing faced Emiliano. This is for you, he said. Your father kept it in the safe with the will. I haven't opened it. Emiliano looked at his name on the envelope, written in ballpoint pen, large letters, unevenly formed, the O in Orsini not quite closed. He picked it up and could feel that there was only one sheet of paper inside. Marin rose from the table. I'll go outside. Stay there, he said. He tore open the edge of the envelope with his thumb, pulled out the paper, and unfolded it. 1 page, written on one side. The handwriting sloped downward toward the end of each line, several words written over themselves, and in the lower corner there was a long streak of ink, as though the pen had dragged across the page when the hand could no longer hold it steady. He read, Dear Mr. Orsini, I don't know you. I've never seen your face either. But my daughter told me about you on Sunday afternoons, and she talked about you the way a person talks when she forgets she's pretending not to love anyone. She doesn't know I could hear it. I could. I didn't tell her, because I'm the worst person in this house when it comes to saying the things that ought to be said. I built wooden boats for 40 years. I don't know anything about your work, and I don't ask. But there is one thing I know for certain, because I've done it a few thousand times. People bring me broken boats and tell me to make them the way they used to be. I always tell them that can't be done. Repairing a boat doesn't mean returning it to the way it was when it was first built. The old hull has already bent in one direction. The wood has already taken on water, and if you try to force it back into its original shape, it will split in the same place the following season. Repairing a boat means making it strong enough to go back out to sea. It won't look the way it did before. It only needs to sail, and to keep sailing for a long time. My daughter believes that loving someone means staying. She believes that because I taught her, not with words, but by leaving too many times at the exact moments when she needed me to stay. My wife was sick for 11 months, and I stayed out in the workshop. I'm not making excuses. I'm only telling you what I left inside that girl. So I'm asking you for one thing. Please don't tell her to stay because of you. She will. She's very good at staying, very good at enduring, and she'll keep doing it until there's nothing of herself left. Tell her to choose a life she can live honestly, then be brave enough to choose yours. If you can't do that, then let her go early for me. But if you can, then I have nothing to give you except the thanks of a man who has run out of time. Gideon Holloway. Emiliano read to the end. Then, he went back to the first line and read it again from the beginning a second time, more slowly than before. No one in the kitchen said anything. When he finished reading it the second time, he folded the paper along its old creases and passed it across the table to Marin. She took it with both hands. She made it a little more than halfway down the page before she stopped, and she didn't continue. She pressed the letter against her chest. 3 days after the funeral, Emiliano returned to Newport and summoned Cormac Dean to the downstairs dining room at 11 o'clock in the morning. Only 4 things lay on the long table, arranged in a straight line. The mail log, the pink postal receipt, the harbor docking schedule, and a set of documents bound in a plastic spine that Nell had assembled the night before. Cormac entered the room with 2 of his men. He looked at the table, and he recognized the first ledger. "You had the duty room safe opened," he said. "I did. You could have asked me. I'm asking you now." Emiliano sat at the head of the table, in the same chair where he had sat that afternoon when he was 29. 11 pieces of mail addressed to Marin Holloway, from February of last year through December. The disposition column says hold. Your signature is in the authorization column, all 11 entries. That was the screening procedure. You approved it. The procedure says the mail is returned to the recipient within 48 hours unless there is a threat. If there is a threat, a report is filed and brought to me. He placed one finger on the ledger. Where are the reports? Cormac didn't answer immediately. She was a security risk, he said. An outsider, no background, living in the house, moving freely around the second floor after hours. I told you about the second floor during the first year. You told me no one was assigned up there after 10 o'clock. That's right. You knew who was going up there. Cormac fell silent. You knew who was going up there, Emiliano repeated, still in the same voice. You patrolled that hallway for 5 years. I did my job. You held 11 letters for 14 months. I protected this house. You held the letters of a woman who was about to lose her father. Emiliano picked up the pink receipt and turned it so Cormac could see the back. This was the first one. Certified mail. A 17-year-old boy spent an extra $1.35 for delivery confirmation because he wanted to know for certain that the letter arrived. It did. 9:42 in the morning. The signature here is yours. He set the paper down. You weren't doing your job, Cormac. You made a choice. One of the 2 men standing behind Cormac stepped half a pace forward. Emiliano didn't look at him. He didn't change his posture, didn't raise his voice, didn't lift his hand from the table. Stay where you are, he said. Both men stopped. No one in the room moved for nearly 5 seconds. Do you want to know why I let you come into this room with 2 of your men? Emiliano asked. Cormac didn't answer. Because today, this isn't being handled the way you and I both know it could be. He pulled the plastic-bound file toward him and opened it. Docking schedules. From February of last year through November. 7 last-minute schedule changes. All 7 approved with your signature. On each of those 7 occasions, my cargo reached the dock between 2 and 5 hours late, and every single time, another party got in ahead of us. He turned to the page with the comparison chart. 7 out of 7, Cormac, Mrs. Brannigan put this chart together in one evening. Cormac's expression didn't change, but he stopped speaking. You thought I would deal with this inside the house, Emiliano said. You thought that because you know me. You stood beside my father before you ever stood beside me, and you know this house has always settled its problems inside these 4 walls. He closed the file. At 9 o'clock this morning, Mrs. Brannigan submitted all of this to the federal prosecutor's office in Providence. The originals, notarized, along with her sworn statement. Cormac's head snapped up. You did what? You heard me. You handed over the harbor records. I handed over all 4 things on this table. Do you know your name is in those records? I know, Emiliano said. I know better than you do. He stood. At 2 o'clock this afternoon, someone will be coming to find you. Whether you wait here or wait out there is your choice. But you aren't leaving Rhode Island, because your passport was included in that file this morning. He walked past Cormac toward the door, then stopped. You kept 11 envelopes in case you ever needed to push a woman out of my house, he said. In the end, the one who has to leave this house is you. Word spread before the prosecutors had even opened the file. Over the next 2 weeks, The downstairs dining room held 3 meetings, and each time there was one more empty chair. The first man to leave was the one in charge of the North Warehouse. He said nothing at all. He simply stopped answering his phone. The second came in person to say it plainly, that in 40 years no one in this house had ever carried their own records to the authorities, and that he wasn't staying to watch it happen a second time. The third brought his own lawyer. By the middle of the month, of the 11 men who had once sat along both sides of that long table, only 4 remained. Emiliano held no one back. He signed the papers for each man to leave, gave them exactly what was owed to them, not $1 short, and he didn't return a single call. He canceled the engagement with the Pastor family in writing, and the price of that decision was the loss of 2 shipping routes on the south side of the bay that his family had controlled since his father's time. He shut down every part of the harbor operation that didn't exist on the books. He didn't move it somewhere else. He didn't hand it to anyone. He closed it completely. 4 warehouses stopped operating in a single night, and he paid severance to more than 60 people out of his own pocket. Nell sat with him for 3 nights straight, calculating what would remain once everything was brought into the light. The final number she gave him was less than 1/3 of what he had possessed in January. He looked at it, nodded, and told her to file the supplemental statement. Throughout all of it, he called Maren every night, and he didn't say a single word to her about any of these things. He asked whether Bodhi had gone back to school. He asked how many hours she had managed to sleep. He asked whether the 2 men from the shop had finished clearing out the innermost bay of the workshop. She talked, he listened, then he wished her good night and ended the call. She found out one evening near the end of the month, when Nell Brannigan called to ask her for a few details about the dates on the postal receipt. When they were finished, Maren was about to hang up when the lawyer added something. "Do you know what's happening here?" "I know about Mr. Dean. Other than that, he hasn't told me anything." Nell was silent for a moment. "Then I'll tell you," she said, and she did, briefly and without emotion, exactly the way a lawyer would read an account statement. How many people had walked away? 2 shipping routes lost. 4 warehouses closed. More than 60 people paid severance. The engagement canceled in writing, and the final number she had calculated over 3 nights. Maren sat down on the staircase of the house in Wickham Harbor and couldn't say a word. "Did he tell you why?" she finally asked. "No, I've asked him 3 times. Why do you think he did it?" "I don't think, Miss Holloway." "I know," Nell exhaled, "but he'll never say it to you, because in his mind, saying it would be the same as sending you a bill. He grew up in a world where every good thing has a price, and the thing he's most afraid of is turning you into someone who owes him." Maren raised a hand to her face. "I'll tell you one more thing," Nell said. "Then I'm hanging up. All right." For 3 years, he drank that cup of coffee every single night. He just never had the courage to ask who left it there. That weekend, he drove 6 hours up to Wickham Harbor, and after they took flowers to the cemetery on the hill, the 2 of them walked back to the house and went out to stand on the wooden dock behind it. "Mrs. Brannigan told me everything," Maren said. "I know. She told me she did. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because if I told you, you'd feel like you had to do something with that information." She turned to look at him. "How much did you lose?" "Enough that Mrs. Brannigan needed 3 nights to calculate it." "Answer me properly." "More than 2/3, he said. "And I may lose more, because the case has only been open for 3 weeks. I don't know how long the prosecutors will keep questioning me. Maybe a year, maybe 2. "Will you have to go to court?" "Mrs. Brannigan says it's possible. She didn't promise me anything, and I didn't ask her to." Maren nodded slowly. "And you?" he said. "Bodhi graduates next June. 9 months from now. 9 months. He has to attend enough days, and he has to pass the 2 classes he's behind in. If he drops out, the agreement for the shop becomes void, and those 2 men lose their jobs after 30 years. You're staying until then." "I'm staying until then," she said. "And I can't go anywhere before June, Mr. Orsini. I'm his legal guardian. I sign his papers. I take him to his appointments. If I go back to Newport, he'll be alone in that house. I'm not asking you to come back to Newport." "I know." They were silent for a while. "So it's a 6-hour drive," she said. 6 hours. "You have an investigation and 11 chairs that are down to 4 now. 4. And I have a 17-year-old brother and a boat shop with transfer papers that still have to be signed." She looked out across the water. "Loving each other doesn't erase any of those things." "No," he said. It doesn't erase any of them. She drew in a breath. I won't ask you to wait. He turned to look at her. I mean it, she said. 9 months is a long time. You're in the middle of the biggest thing that's ever happened in your life. If sometime during those 9 months you realize you can't do this anymore, just tell me. And I won't blame you for it. I don't want you living inside a promise you have to strain yourself to keep. Are you finished? Yes. Then don't ask me what I'm choosing, he said. I'm telling you not to wait. And I'm telling you I'm not asking your permission about that. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I'll tell you what I'm choosing, he said. I'm not choosing 9 months, because I don't know what 9 months will look like. And I'm not going to stand here and promise you something I can't control. I'm choosing what I can control. What's that? This weekend, I'm here. Next week I have to be in Providence for a meeting. The week after that, I'll come up. The week after that, I'll call you every night. And if there's a week I can't come, I'll tell you before it happens instead of leaving you sitting here wondering. He looked directly into her eyes. I'm not promising 9 months. I'm promising 1 week at a time. And if there's a week I fail to keep that promise, you have the right to end this without explaining yourself to me. You're giving me a way out. I'm giving you the right your father asked me to give you, he said. Marin stood very still for a long time. Then I'll tell you what I'm choosing too, she said. Go ahead. I'm choosing my brother first. For these 9 months, he comes first. And if there's a week when I have to tell you not to come because he needs me, I'll tell you plainly. All right. I'm choosing to finish grieving my father instead of carrying him with me for the rest of my life like a sentence. All right. And I'm choosing you, she said. Not because you came to save me in that kitchen that night, but because when I finally said what I needed, you didn't walk away. In June of the following year, Bodie Holloway stood on the stage in the Wickham Harbor High School gymnasium and received his diploma, and the man sitting in the 3rd row was already on his feet, applauding before they had even finished reading Bodie's name. 2 weeks later, the transfer papers for the boat shop were signed. The 2 longtime craftsmen became its owners, and the first thing they did was tell the painter not to touch the old wooden sign on the roof. The Holloway name stayed exactly where it had been for 40 years. That fall, Marin applied to return for her 2nd year of nursing school in Bangor, paid the tuition with her own money, and wrote her brother's name in the emergency contact box. Under the terms of the will, the house at 41 Cotter Street couldn't be sold for 5 years, so the 2 of them didn't buy it. They simply moved in. Emiliano sold the Newport house in September, after the prosecutors finished taking his testimony, and he brought nothing with him from there except several boxes of paperwork. What he did throughout that winter was spend his afternoons in the innermost bay of the boat shop. The wooden boat was still there, unfinished, its bow complete, its hull still missing 7 planks. The 2 old craftsmen taught him how to bend wood with steam, and during the first 3 months, he ruined more pieces than he finished properly. Marin helped every weekend, sanding the wood, exactly the job she had done when she was 9. By March, the hull was closed. On the port side, the 4th plank up from the keel had a cut that was off by about 1/5 of an inch, so the end didn't quite sit flush against the plank beside it, and anyone who looked closely could see it immediately. It was the last plank Gideon Holloway had ever cut with his left hand. The 2 craftsmen asked whether they should replace it. It would have taken 1 afternoon. Marin said no. They painted the name across the stern one April afternoon, white letters against cedar wood, 5 letters, Della. On the first night, the 2 of them slept in the house on Cotter Street. Emiliano woke and found that Marin wasn't lying beside him. He looked at the clock on the bedside table. 2:07 in the morning. He sat up too quickly, his feet touching the floor before he had even had time to think, and for about 2 seconds his entire body went cold with the thought that she was crying somewhere in this house again, and he hadn't heard her. Then he looked toward the window. She was standing there with her back to him, her hair tied low, holding something in both hands. He walked toward her. She turned before he could call her name. She was smiling. In her hands were 2 cups, both still steaming. She held one out to him. "It's 2 o'clock in the morning," he said. "I know. Is something wrong?" "Nothing is wrong." She lifted the cup a little higher until he took it. "I just wanted to see if you'd still come when you heard me moving around." He took the cup in both hands, and he said nothing more, and the 2 of them stood together beside the window in the house where a boat builder had lived, made mistakes, remained silent, and kept trying for 40 years, until the coffee had gone completely cold. Some moments that change an entire life never arrive at the right time. They come at 2 o'clock in the morning, among packed boxes and a one-way ticket, when every easy road has already closed. Love isn't proven by avoiding loss, but by two people finally stopping their flight from each other, accepting the cost of choosing one another, and building a sound boat from whatever wood remains. There are things that, if we don't say them today, may one day have no one left to hear them. The truth can arrive late and still arrive in time. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like and share it with someone to whom you still have something you haven't yet found the courage to say. Subscribe to our channel so that each day we can walk together through another story of kindness. And what about you? How did this story make you feel? If you had been there that night, would you have spoken? Or would you have let fear make the decision for you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We truly want to hear what you feel deep in your heart. We wish everyone watching this video good health, a joyful life, and peaceful days beside the people you love. Goodbye, and we'll see you again in the next video.